Thank you again for allowing me to sit here with you at this committee. And first of all, I want to thank the committee and the witnesses that we have here. I'm from Laredo border area, born there, very familiar with the border. The dynamics there on the border are very revealing in so many ways. I agree with Kathy when she was mentioned a few minutes ago about in order to support this, we're getting some pressure from our local law enforcement officials. And I'm, again, familiar with the BEST program. We started that in Laredo. It's one that expanded. I think we need to do a little bit more to expand it more. But it's working with the Mexicans, which is important. There's other opportunities that we can use to work with the local law enforcement. I think they're willing, as they get those telephone calls to the jails, because there's some work that's done inside the jails, they're willing to open up the jails for the telephone calls that are coming in. When we set up, when Border Patrol has some of those towers, they want to, I think it's a good idea if we can use some of those towers, because sometimes they have interoperability communication issues, so we can use those assets with them. There's a lot of things that we can work on to enhance the border law enforcement. I know that the border sheriffs have received monies a couple years ago, in the last couple of years, and other things that we want to work. But there's some things that I would ask y'all to continue working with them, because that puts us in a difficult situation. Mexico, that has a 2,000-mile border with us, I believe right now it's about $47 from the United States in assistance. Don't want to mention any other countries, but there's other countries that get $800 million, up to $1 billion a year, $500 million, $40 million a year. And here's Mexico. At a daily basis, they trade as good as $1 billion of commerce between the United States and Mexico. $1 billion a day. That doesn't include retail, doesn't include tourism. So the connection on an economic impact is tremendous for both sides. 2,000 miles, almost 2,000 miles of border. But at the same time, where we're seeing them having trouble, our assistance to them is $47 million compared to some of the other numbers without mentioning other countries. Mexico's at a point, like Michael said, that they're asking for assistance. And as Michael said, Representative McCall, we spent time with the President, an hour with him, spent 2 hours with the Attorney General. When we were there, they had just captured one of the drug cartel leaders, and he was excited about what they have done. At the same time we were there, one of the individuals, one of his lieutenants there, one of his top person there, we were told afterwards that you can understand the pressure they're under, personal pressure that they're under, about how he's having personal problems because his wife and the kids, because of security reasons, puts a lot of pressure. So you can understand what these individuals are going on a daily basis, because they are targets. But one of the things that the President Calderon said that I think was very important when we sat with him, when he said, we have to win this war. We are going to continue sacrificing money, the $7 billion, and putting a lot more what the United States is talking about. We are going to sacrifice money, and we are going to sacrifice blood. Men and women in the front line, they're soldiers, they're federal law enforcement officials, they're being killed. So they are very serious about what they're trying to do. When we were there, he was very open about understanding that there are problems, the lack of confidence in the local police on the border. And we were there on a Monday. The next day in the morning, as you know, the federal troops came into a lot of the northern border towns and basically started making changes there, because he understands there is a corruption problem. But again, I would say that it doesn't stop at the Rio Grande. It's in the north and the southern part of the Rio Grande and other places. But he understands that they have to make changes. The assistance that we want to work with them it's interesting because, Mr. Chairman, we're in a situation where we're trying to find a comfort zone with Mexico. It is a paradigm change, because they've always wanted to keep us apart, but they understand how difficult. So we do have a window of opportunity to work with them. The assistance, again, is not a single, my understanding is not a single penny is going to be transferred over to them. It's transfer of technology, equipment, and training. It also includes X-ray machines to be used at the borders and other ports of entry, which again helps us over here. It's going to help them improve their data, their immigration database also. That's going to help us in the United States also. It's the rule of law, human rights training, other things, you know. So we have to be careful that we don't just talk about helicopters. That's a small piece. There's the rule of training, there's judicial training, there's the prosecutorial training, there's other things that are important. In fact, if you look at the military, I believe just when we were there, they had just a couple months ago, they had named what is a director of human rights or something to that extent, which is something different. They're opening up the Mexican military to more women. They had just had a human rights case where this soldier was accused of rape, and instead of just going to the military like they always do, they took him to a non-military court. So they're making changes because they want to make sure that they work with us in the United States. Now, Mr. Chairman, and I understand that the difficulty, but I think it's up to Congress, with all due respect. I know there was an issue where you didn't inform us, and we talked to the Mexican congressman, senator. They were complaining about their administration also, just like we were. They're in the same shoes that we were. But I think ultimately it's going to depend on us as to how we structure this. But let me tell you, you know, on the border, what we're hearing on the other side, the Mexican cartels have permeated and infiltrated civil society. And if we think this is bad, it's going to get worse. And let me tell you what. Imagine if you open up a business, Mr. Chairman, and then you get a knock one day and say, guess what? You got a partner. You got to pay a tax on this. And it's basically some of the organized crime saying, in order for you to continue, you got to pay a tax. And that's another way how they're collecting. Besides selling drugs, they're permeating civil society. This is right across my hometown, just right across the river, and it's up and down the river. And this is what I'm worried about, because there's no magical line in the river, at least in Texas when we talk about the Rio Grande. We have a saying, the Rio Grande unites us, doesn't divide us. And we're coming up with a solution about spending billions of dollars on a fence, which I think is a false sense of security. I'd rather use it in other ways of providing security. But anyway, we're looking at certain things here, and there's nothing in the Rio Grande that's going to stop this spillover to the United States. And I think local law enforcement or law enforcement will tell you, yes, it's happened already. The spillovers happen, or it's going to happen more. I mean, we can argue about how much the degree is. But the thing is, it is to our own interest to help the Mexicans win this on their side. Because I'd rather have, our local law enforcement do our work here at our side, but at the same time fight it on the other side. Because there's not an imaginary line that's going to stop the bad guys from coming over to the United States. And it's a lot easier being thousands of miles away, but when you live in the border and you got family there and you got community there and understanding what the dynamics is, when you talk about $47 million that we're giving to a partner, Mexico, where on a daily basis we exchange $1 billion going south and north of just trade, and doesn't include retail and tourism, it's a window of opportunity, like Michael said, that we have to take advantage of. But the bottom line is, Mr. Chairman, the only thing I ask you as a chairman is that we look at how we shape this to make sure it's a package that works for our best interest, because I think it is to our own interest to help the Mexican. If we have a strong, prosperous Mexico, it is our interest to have that type of assistance. So, Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I know this is a difficult issue. I know we're in a tight situation. But again, for the economy, for our, for just the standard of living that we have on the border, it affects not only the border but other communities. It is to our best interest to help Mexico win this war. And let me tell you, when we spoke to the president, and I guess you got to spend time, he is serious. He is serious about winning this war. He is serious. And he said the money is important, but what they're looking at, will the United States stand with them during this critical time that they're facing in fighting the drug cartels? So the money, we can adjust it, maybe make it smaller or whatever we want to do. But whatever we do, it's not only the money part or the transfer technology, I should say money, the transfer technology, equipment, and training, but it's whether the United States is going to stand there with our partner that has 2,000 miles of border with us.
Well, I think that's well said, Mr. Cuellar. I agree with everything you said. I want to reiterate that I keep mentioning the lack of informing Congress as the plan was being formulated, because I don't want that to happen again. And while our Mexican colleagues also profess not to know, the truth is I first started to learn the details of it from one of our Mexican colleagues who came and sat into my office and said, oh, well, let me tell you what's going to be proposed, and ran down a litany of things which I was not aware of, and which I think is no way to conduct things like this. You can see by the amount of participation we've had here today that this is certainly an initiative that, and a subject that many people on both sides of the aisle are very concerned with and concerned about. So I thank you for your comments, and I would like to conclude by asking a few questions. I let others ask first. I'd like to just kind of wrap up a few questions.